and the subsequent financial crisis and the whole subprime lending fiasco is that a lot of that stuff wasn't necessarily illegal. It was just immoral or inappropriate or reckless. That's exactly why we needed to pass Dodd-Frank, to prohibit some of these practices. You know, the financial sector is very creative, and they are always looking for ways to make money. That's their job. And if there are loopholes and rules that can be bent and arbitrage to be had, they will take advantage of it. So, you know, without commenting on particular prosecutions, obviously that's not my job, that's the Attorney General's job. You know, I think part of people's frustrations, part of my frustration, was a lot of practices that should not have been allowed weren't necessarily against the law, but they had a huge destructive impact. And that's why it was important for us to put in place financial rules that protect the American people from reckless decision-making and irresponsible behavior. Now, with respect to Solyndra and Fast and Furious, you know, I think I've been very clear that I have complete confidence in Attorney General Holder in how he handles his office. He has been very aggressive in going after gun running and cash transactions that are going to these transnational drug cartels in Mexico. There's been a lot of cooperation between the United States and Mexico on this front. He's indicated that he was not aware of what was happening in Fast and Furious. Certainly I was not, and I think both he and I would have been very unhappy if somebody had suggested that guns were allowed to pass through that could have been prevented by the United States of America. He's assigned an Inspector General to look into how exactly this happened, and I have complete confidence in him, and I've got a complete confidence in the process to figure out who, in fact, was responsible for that decision and how it got made. Solyndra, this is a loan guarantee program that predates me, that historically has had support from Democrats and Republicans as well. And the idea is pretty straightforward. If we are going to be able to compete in the 21st century, then we've got to dominate cutting-edge technologies. We've got to dominate cutting-edge manufacturing. Clean energy is part of that package of technologies of the future that have to be based here in the United States if we're going to be able to succeed. Now, the loan guarantee program is designed to meet a particular need in the marketplace, which is a lot of these small startups, they can get angel investors, they can get several $1 million to get a company going, but it's very hard for them to then scale up, particularly if these are new cutting-edge technologies. It's hard for them to find private investors. And part of what's happening is China and Europe, other countries, are putting enormous subsidies into these companies and giving them incentives to move offshore. Even if the technology was developed here in the United States, they end up going to China because the Chinese government say, we're going to help you get started, we'll help you scale up, we'll give you low-interest loans or no-interest loans, we will give you siting, we will do whatever it takes for you to get started here. And that's part of the reason why a lot of technologies that developed here, we've now lost the lead in. Solar energy, wind energy. And so what the loan guarantee program was designed to do was to close that gap and say, let's see if we can help some of those folks locate here and create jobs here in the United States. Now, we knew from the start that the loan guarantee program was going to entail some risk, by definition. If it was a risk-free proposition, then we wouldn't have to worry about it. But the overall portfolio has been successful. It has allowed us to help companies, for example, start advanced battery manufacturing here in the United States. It's helped to create jobs. There were going to be some companies that did not work out. Solyndra was one of them. But the process by which the decision was made was on the merits. It was straightforward. And Of course there were going to be debates internally, when you're dealing with something as complicated as this. But I have confidence that the decisions were made based on what would be good for the American economy and the American people, and putting people back to work. And by the way, let me make one last point about this. I heard there was a Republican member of Congress who's engaging in oversight on this. And despite the fact that all of them in the past have been supportive of this loan guarantee program, he concluded, you know what, we can't compete against China when it comes to solar energy. Well, you know what? I don't buy that. I'm not going to surrender to other countries, technological leads that could end up determining whether or not we're building a strong middle class in this country. And so, we're going to have to keep on pushing hard to make sure that manufacturing is located here, new businesses are located here, and new technologies are developed here. And there are going to be times where it doesn't work out, but I'm not going to cave to the competition when they are heavily subsidizing all these industries.
Just a follow-up on Wall Street. Are you satisfied with how aggressive your administration has been when it comes to prosecuting? Because I know a lot of it was legal, but a lot of it was not. There was fraud that took place.
Right. Well, let me say this. The president can't go around saying prosecute somebody. But as a general principle, if somebody has engaged in fraudulent actions, they need to be prosecuted. If they've violated laws on the books, they need to be prosecuted. And that's the Attorney General's job. I know that Attorney General Holder, U.S. attorneys all across the country, they take that job very seriously. Okay. Hans.
Thank you, Mr. President. You just spoke of the need for banks to start lending. You talked earlier about how creative they can be in chasing profit. And yet earlier in the week you said that banks, quote, don't have some inherent right to just, get a certain amount of profit. He also said in that interview that you can stop them. How do you plan on stopping them from charging this $5 fee or whatever the fee is? And do you think that your government has a right to dictate how much profits American companies make?
I absolutely do not think that. I was trying to make a broader point, which is that people have been using financial regulation as an excuse to charge consumers more, right? I mean, basically the argument they've made is, well, you know what, this hidden fee was prohibited, and so we'll find another fee to make up for it. Now, they have that right, but it's not a good practice. It's not necessarily fair to consumers, and my main goal is to make sure that we've got a consumer watchdog in place who is letting consumers know what fair practices are, making sure that transactions are transparent, and making sure that banks have to compete for customers based on the quality of their service and good prices. Now, the frustrating thing that we have right now is that you've got folks over in Congress, Republicans, who said that they see their role as eliminating any prohibitions on any practices for financial companies. And I think that's part of the frustration that the American people feel, because they've just gone through a period in which they were seeing a bunch of hidden fees, rate hikes that they didn't know about, fine print that they could not understand. That's true for credit cards, that's true for mortgages. It contributed to overall weakness in the economy. And yes, I think it is entirely appropriate for the government to have some oversight role to make sure that consumers are protected. So banks and any business in America can price their products any way they want. That's how the free market works. As long as there's transparency and accountability, and consumers understand what they're getting, and there are going to be instances where a policy judgment is made that, you know what, there's certain practices that just aren't fair. And you know, that's how the market's always operated.
So is it your understanding Consumer Financial Protection Bureau can
I think that what the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau could do is to make sure that consumers understood exactly what they were getting, exactly what was happening. And I think that Congress could make determinations with respect to whether or not a certain practice was fair or not. Okay. David Nakamura.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just following up on Jake's question about Solyndra, the loan program, guaranteed loan program that you talked about was giving out $38 billion in guaranteed loans and promised to save or create 65,000 jobs, green jobs and clean energy. And there's been reports even that actually only 3,500 new jobs have been created in that industry. Why has that industry been so slow to respond to the investment that your administration has provided? And what do you see going forward as to how it will respond?
Well, you know, I think that what has been true historically is that businesses that rely on new technologies, a lot of times it's going to take a while before they get takeoff. And there are a lot of upfront investments that have to be made in research and capital and so forth, a lot of barriers for companies that are trying to break in. Keep in mind that clean energy companies are competing against traditional energy companies. And you know, traditional energy is still cheaper in a lot of ways. The problem is it's running out, it's polluting, and we know that demand is going to keep on increasing, so that if we don't prepare now, if we don't invest now, if we don't get on top of technologies now, we're going to be facing 20 years from now, China and India having 1 billion new drivers on the road, the trend lines in terms of oil prices, coal, et cetera, going up, the impact on the planet increasing, and we're not just going to be able to start when all heck is breaking loose and say, boy, we better find some new energy sources. So in the meantime, we've got to make these investments, but that makes it more difficult for a lot of these companies to succeed. What's also a problem, as I said, is that other countries are subsidizing these industries much more aggressively than we are. Hundreds of billions of dollars the Chinese government is pouring into the clean energy sector, partly because they're projecting what's going to happen 10 or 20 years from now. So, look, I have confidence in American businesses and American technology and American scientists and entrepreneurs being able to win that competition. We are not going to be duplicating the kind of system that they have in China, where they are basically state-run banks giving money to state-run companies and ignoring losses and ignoring bad management. But there is a role to play for us to make sure that these companies can at least have a fighting shot. And it does mean that there are going to be some that aren't successful, and it's going to be an uphill climb for some. And obviously, it's very difficult for all companies right now to succeed when the economy is as soft and as weak as it is.
Some reports with Solyndra in particular that investors, Solyndra, warned your administration that a government-backed loan of $500 million in that company might not be a wise use of taxpayers' money. In retrospect, do you think that your administration was so eager for Solyndra to succeed that it missed some of the critical warnings?
I will tell you that even for those projects under this loan guarantee program that have ended up being successful, there are those in the marketplace who have been doubtful. So, I mean, there's always going to be a debate about whether this particular approach to this particular technology is going to be successful or not. And all I can say is that the Department of Energy made these decisions based on their best judgment about what would make sense. The nature of these programs are going to be ones in which, for every success, there may be one that does not work out as well. But that's exactly what the loan guarantee program was designed by Congress to do, was to take bets